Hi, I'm Mark from Novation, and we're here today at Wembley Music Centre, and we've brought with us our entire Launchpad collection. So over the course of this video we're going to be showing you what a Launchpad is, how to get to grips with the hardware and use it with the Ableton Live software which is included in the box, and also the subtle differences between each of the Launchpad range. So let's get into it and answer that all important question: what is a Launchpad? So a Launchpad is essentially a grid-based controller for the included Ableton Live software. Now Ableton Live is a DAW or digital audio workstation, and where Ableton Live kind of differs from your traditional kind of workstation, it has two views. So we have the kind of linear recording view, which is great for multi-tracking, much like other DAWs. But it's really in the session view where the Launchpad and Ableton really come to life in terms of musical performance. So what are we actually kind of seeing on the Launchpad? Well, we have 64 coloured pads which kind of represent what we can see in the session view here in Ableton. So each one of these individual, they call them clips, contains a piece of music. So whether that's any audio information or MIDI information that's perhaps triggering another instrument like a software synthesizer or something like that, each one of these represents that clip. And we can trigger these clips individually by just simply pressing the pads. And if we want to stop any of the clips from playing, what we can do is we can just press an empty clip slot on that particular channel, and that will stop the clip from playing. So as we can see, it's really easy just to kind of trigger clips, different pieces of music, audio, MIDI information, and what that's going to do is essentially create a musical performance that is not limited via a timeline. So this can be different every single time we launch these clips. Now also what we can do as well is we can actually launch any of a row of clips, which they call a scene, all together by the scene launch buttons that we have displayed at the far right hand side of the Launchpad. And this can be a really good way of structuring out your music and your performance. So that's essentially how we kind of trigger clips and how we trigger scenes within Ableton. But obviously, you know, the projects themselves can get bigger than the 8 channels that we have here. So, you know, we have a cursor here on the Launchpad, which we can see on the screen is moving that cursor up and down. And you'll see that the Launchpad is essentially displaying a display of kind of 64 clips within that view. So this is a great way of moving around your session, because your sessions can get bigger than the 8 channels themselves. As well, you can see that the Launchpad Mark II in itself is very colourful. So this gives us the ability to colour code our clips. So we can see on channel 1 here I have my drums, and these are a nice kind of pink colour, but if we want to we can change that to a blue or a grey colour, and what this will do is give us a representation. So what we have here is full RGB colour pads, and this can be a really good way of, say, kind of labelling different parts, or, you know, if you're using it in a live performance to perhaps DJ, you can kind of group your tracks harmonically as well and colour code them. So colour coding is really great, and it keeps you focused on the controller itself and less on the laptop as well, which is really good for live performance. So that's the grid itself. Moving around the top here, we have a session button as well, which will always get us back to the session view. So if we find ourselves in other pages of the Launchpad, we can always use the session to get back to the session page. We have user 1 and user 2. We can explore more of these later on, but essentially one of the great things you can do with Launchpad is make your own light shows as well. Light shows have become a viral phenomenon with the Launchpad. Lots of people doing the Launchpad covers with really graphical kind of interesting light shows going on. So once we've figured out how to kind of trigger clips and trigger scenes, groups of clips together, one thing we're going to want to do is then kind of manipulate the performance or the audio. A great way you can do that with Launchpad is via the mixer button here. So we have a volume page. So if we go back to our session view and perhaps trigger some drums, and then we jump back into the mixer view, we can then access the volume page. And we can make a volume change, so we can see on Ableton Live on channel 1, we can see we're controlling the audio volume or track volume of the drums. We also have panning as well, so we get this kind of view in the pan display, and this will allow us to kind of pan our drums either to the left or right hand side of the stereo field. What that'll do is a great technique is you can have a couple of kind of hi-hat loops, pan one hard left, one hard right, and that'll give you a nice stereo image to your performance. And again, we can kind of step this, so we can pan it hard right, hard left, or back in the middle. So as well as that, we have access to send A and send B, and essentially what a send is a way of sending the audio from one track into what they call a return track on Ableton. So we can see over here on the right hand side we have our send A and send B. Traditionally these are send A is a reverb and send B is a delay. So we can actually send the amount of audio we want to send into that return track. So for example, we can send our drums here into the reverb on send A. Or if we want to, we can add a delay to them as well. So we have control over our sends as well. Also, there are added functions within the mixer section. So we have our stop clips. So if we want to, we can stop clips individually, or if we want to, we can stop them, and that will stop all of the clips together by just pressing the stop button. So as well as this, we have mutes as well. So if we launch a few clips here, and we go back into our mixer section, we can also mute parts of the performance. So this can be a really good way of just instantly killing something when you're using it live on stage. As well as that, we have solo, so we can solo the drums here. And also we have record arm, and record arm will essentially record on that particular channel. So this can be a great way if you've got like a live performer on stage with you, you have an audio interface, a way of capturing say a microphone, you can quickly record on the channel and just drop some vocals in over the performance as well. So that's a really brief look around the Launchpad and what you can do with it. It's a really great tool for live performance. So the Launchpad Mini is essentially the same amount of control that you get with the Launchpad Mark II, but it's just on a lot smaller scale. So we obviously have a smaller size pads, but essentially we've got the full flexibility and control over Ableton Live that we get with the Mark II. Now, one of the most noticeable things is you don't have the RGB color feedback, so we can still kind of trigger clips, but essentially we only get 3 colors. So we get green when a clip is launched and playing, they're amber or orange when they're dormant and ready to be played, and we also get a red color when we kind of stop the clips as well. But essentially we have the same amount of control that we have over Ableton Live that we do with the Mark II. We also get exactly the same software that we get in the box. So we get a copy of Ableton Live Lite. We also get a gigabyte of Loop Masters samples as well to get you going. Now the other thing is we also get a really nice overlay card in the box. So we can, whether we're using it with Ableton Live or if we're using it with FL Studio, we can just use the overlay to let us know what we're controlling. So we can still launch clips, we can still move around our session, so we can move up and down with the cursors. And we also have access to the mixer control as well, so we can make a volume change, track volume change. We can jump into the panning, or send A and send B. And we can also access the stop clips mutes as well. And we can also solo, and we can also record arm. So there we have the Launchpad Mini, which is essentially very similar to the Mark II, but it's on a very smaller scale. And in terms of budget, if you're looking to get into Launchpad, it's a very affordable solution. Of course, the real jump up happens when we jump to the Launchpad Pro, which is a flagship Launchpad in the range. And we can see that physically it's a lot bigger, it's a lot kind of thicker, and it has a lot more sort of controls around the outside of the grid. But essentially we have the same RGB color feedback that we get with the Mark II. but we have a lot more functions around the outside. So for example, gone is the mixer button, so there's no mixer button. But what we have done is given a complete row of mixer functionality down the bottom. Now the reason for this is that it actually speeds up workflow. So when working previously with the Launchpad, you would have to jump into a sub-menu to say access a track select or a volume change. But now you have all of these at the bottom part of the Launchpad Pro. So making a volume change is really simple. We can just latch into the page and we can just make a quick volume change. Now, one of the other things you'll notice is that we get this kind of natural transition happening as opposed to a step transition on the volume change. This is because we've introduced velocity sensitive pads. So what we get is if we press lightly, we get a kind of slow transition, but if we press really hard, we get a more faster transition. So we have velocity sensitive pads on the Launchpad Pro. But still we have panning, we have sends, and again this velocity sensitive movement is still apparent in all of the sends, the panning, and also the volume changing as well. So we have a dedicated row for mixer functionality, still got the session button so we can jump back to the session at any time, and we can trigger clips the same, and we can trigger scenes as well down the side. So one of the questions that Launchpad Pro really addresses is what you're going to do beyond launching clips. So the Mark II and the Mini are great for launching clips and scenes and doing your own mashups and stuff. But the real answer to that question is you're probably going to want to move on and make your own music. And this is something that the Launchpad Pro can do. So for example, what I can do here is just make sure I've got my drum channel recorder on there. And you can see we have this note button on Launchpad Pro. And what that's going to do is essentially mimic what we're seeing on Ableton Live. So it's going to give us a visual representation of Ableton's drum rack. And now what we can do is trigger our own drum sounds. And on Launchpad Pro, on the left hand side here, we have a row of recording or clip editing buttons. So we can hit record and we can record in our own drum parts. We can turn on the click track, which will trigger the metronome. We also have an undo, so an undo will essentially undo any of the last actions we've done. And if we want to reinstate that or recall that, we can hold shift and we have a redo button as well. Now we have a delete button as well, which has a lot of functionality. So when we're working in the session view, if we want to delete anything, we can hold delete. We can actually take out or remove any of the clips that we want. And just using the redo button there, or the undo, we can undo those and bring them back. So that's what delete does, but also within the note mode itself, it can actually delete any of the triggered notes. We also have a quantize button, so once we finish recording, we can hit quantize, and then it will snap all of the notes to the quantize settings we have here in Ableton Live. And we also have record quantize as well. So if we want to, we can hold shift and record quantize, turn that on. So the second we finish recording, that'll just instantly quantize everything. We also have a duplicate for duplicating any of the notes or any of the clips that we have in the session view. And we also have a double button as well, which will double anything in length. So 2 bar to 4 bar, 4 bar to 8 bar. So Launchpad Pro really becomes a music production controller as well. And especially when we think about pitched instruments as well. So perhaps we have a variety of soft synthesizers that we want to use or instruments within Ableton Live. We can actually use them with Launchpad Pro in a pitched scale mode as well. So here we have a chromatic keyboard layout where we have kind of the root note of C by default, and this is represented by the purple keys or purple pads, and this is essentially a jump to the next octave. So we go C, D, E, F, and then so on and so forth up to the next octave as well. And you also have the ability to select different scale types as well. So if we want to work in a minor or major scale, we can change the scale types as well. So this is a really good way of being able to not only play your drum parts in, but you can also play pitched instruments, you know, synths, pads, even guitar if you want to with the Launchpad Pro. So that's a brief look around the note mode, but again, one of the other really good features that we have on Launchpad Pro is the ability to control all of the devices within Ableton Live. So we use a track select here and just kind of change the track focus. We're going to go to this channel here where we have a beat repeat, we have a reverb and a compressor. So for example, if we wanted to control the compressor, we can select device, and then what we're going to see is a visual representation of the different parameter controls that we can have over that device. But at the moment we're on the beat repeat, and let's say I want to control the compressor, I can actually move along the devices, and we can see at the bottom of Ableton Live, we're moving the blue hand control over to the compressor, and then we get again 8 visual representations of the parameters that we can control. So for example, if I move this one here, we can see that we're controlling the threshold on the compressor, all with that touch sensitive, velocity sensitive action that we have on Launchpad. So this is a really, really good way of controlling all of Ableton Live's devices. So that's a little brief look around the Launchpad Pro and some of the added functionality you get. But also, as well as the realms of music production, it can also extend your performance capabilities as well. On the rear of the Launchpad Pro, we have a MIDI output, and within the box you'll get the breakout cables, which will allow you to connect to standard 5-pin DIN MIDI. And then what we can do is actually expand our live performance beyond Ableton Live and software. So Launchpad Pro itself can actually trigger external hardware such as synthesizers, drum machines. So although you've got both software and hardware, we can actually trigger an external synthesizer using the chromatic keyboard layout. So as well as a really good production controller and a performance controller, we can also trigger and bring in external hardware into our live performance. So there we have a complete look at the entire Novation Launchpad range. For more information, please visit www.wembleymusiccentre.com or pop down to the local showroom. Thanks for watching.